Hello, this week we're looking at number 9 in our series on the book of Daniel. This one's entitled From Contamination to Purification. A set of ideas that are not terribly familiar to us in a religious sense today. The whole idea of being clean and unclean and the need to purify. Well, that all relates to things in the kitchen or around the house, not really to us ourselves. So when we come to Daniel 8:14, which of course is in our material for this week, we really are looking at something a little different. The cleansing of the sanctuary. The whole idea really of setting it right. I put in the notes for this time in the comments section these ideas. The most important aspects for this particular lesson are what sin does, how God fixes it, how this reflects on the nature and character of God, how this reveals the issues and the controversy, and lastly, how God eventually restores harmony to the universe. So what we're really talking about here is all the problems since sin entered to the world and all the history since then until God finally restores it. Now, in Daniel 8:14, in the middle of our material, the cleansing of the sanctuary, dealing with these ideas that come from the Old Testament, reapplied in Hebrews and so on, and relate to the work of Jesus in heaven for us, we have to try and take ourselves out, I think, of the mindset that all too often we get into, which is kind of trying to understand all the details of the sanctuary services and everything else like that, important though that they may be, and see the big picture, that this is God setting everything right. He is the one who is saying to us, okay, we have a big problem, and I have to try and find a way to bring you back to myself, despite all the things that you have done, despite the way that you have lived, despite your attitude to me even, because we are the ones who are hostile to God. We are the ones who have said, we really don't want to know you. We're the rebels. We are not the ones who have really tried to get back together with God. He's the one who's taken the initiative. He's not our enemy. He wants to be our friend. So as we think about Daniel later, as we look at this material, let's try and think about some of these things, because as I put in the notes for this time in the quote section from C.S. Lewis, some things are so terribly real we can't impossibly imagine them. We can't possibly imagine the things which are almost outside of our experience. How do we think about God? Who is God anyway? How do we relate to him? Why are we in this trouble? What did we do? Was it just our forefathers? Is it us? What about original sin? I mean, there are so many questions that come into all of this, but I want to focus on God's actions in working to redeem us, to save us from ourselves, because otherwise we get into all that nitty-gritty, and sometimes we get into what I call bibliomancy, the use of the Bible almost in, I want to say, a pagan way, almost trying to use it as a methodology to guide us, but not in a way that is really helpful, but in a way that is using it rather like a fortune teller, as a magic book, as a talisman or something. No, we don't want to be doing that, and especially not when we come to the book of Daniel, because the book of Daniel is talking about things which are so totally real, and it's letting us know what is going to happen. Daniel had this vision of what was going to happen for the future in response to his concern over all of this. And in the end, everything is going to be made right, cleansed, if you will, and God is going to eventually restore us to himself, if that's what we want. So those are my ideas this week of what you should be concentrating on as you think about this. Don't worry about all the granularity, all the detail. Worry about the big picture and what it tells us about our loving Lord.